Hi, today I've got Robbie Wilson from the Kundalini Genie. The Kundalini Genie are a Glasgow-based psychedelic band. They released their fourth album, 1111, last year, and Robbie's just here telling us a little bit about his songwriting techniques and some of his best moments, including a tour across Europe and supporting the Brian Jonestown Massacre in Glasgow. Hi, I've got Robbie here from the Kundalini Genie. Hi, Robbie, thanks very much for being here today.
Right, Cammy, thanks for having me.
No worries. Yeah, first of all, if you just tell us a little bit about the Kundalini Genie for anyone who doesn't know of you.
We're just like a fucking mad band for Glasgow. I was just a mainly like psychedelic experimental rock and roll band from Glasgow.
Cool. And so, like, obviously, coronavirus, a massive impact for 2020. How did that impact anything you had planned for the year?
Yeah, it was quite like a big impact, like anyone, you know. It was like we had plans for tour and stuff. There was tentative plans that I was going to be going on tour with Frankie Teardrop Dead, in Cambodia, and then there was like pretty definitive plans to go on tour with them as their drummer, in like May or April or something like that. I'm not sure. Maybe it was a completely different month, and I'm just making things up at this point. But I'm sure that was something that was supposed to be happening. It's hard to tell anymore, like what like is going on, you know. There was plans for the Kundalini Genie to tour as well, but and do all sorts of different stuff, loads of gigs planned and all that. There was a second album planned for the year, and you know, so it was like quite a big impact. Luckily, I already had like a record recorded, so you know, it was able to essentially like move forward as normal, but it had a big delay, and so that's kind of been the script, really, you know.
Cool. And that was the last album, 1111.
Yeah.
Ah, cool. And did you manage to get to play any like socially distanced shows or anything in that small period when things were back open?
No, we had someone that was trying to book us. We were for a brief period. I think we were going to be like one of the first ever bands to play again in Glasgow, because we were getting booked in December for like a 30-person socially distanced show, but obviously that didn't go ahead, you know. But yeah, I would like to play a socially distanced show, like mainly because it was like seated, and I think that would be like really cool because people would come to expect, like, you know, if people are standing, I tend to want to do an energetic like type of performance, you know. Rock and roll was high octane, you know, whereas like if people are all sitting down, they would expect us to come and be like, oh, intense, and we would bring like sitars and like acoustic guitars and stuff and do like loads of pure Indian sit down mantra jams and stuff, and people would be pure like, wait, I wasn't expecting this, you know.
Cool. Yeah, that would be like, yeah, I guess for it's a different vibe if everybody's sitting down and you've got a lot less sort of people in
Yeah,
there and things.
yeah.
Yeah. And did you guys find any sort of, or yourself find any positives coming out of lockdown, like for writing wise or anything like that?
um I guess so. Like in terms of like, it's been nice to like take a break because obviously like from like, you know, my entire life since I started has just been completely and wholly focused on doing it. And there's not been any point where I've taken a break, you know, like maybe like 1 or 2 days max at any point, and then it would be back to just like recording, writing, practicing, like gigging, all that type of stuff. There would always be something going on. So yeah, it's been nice to just take a break from that, I guess. It's maybe given me like more space. Definitely, I've been writing a lot, but like, you know, rather than writing like, you know, over the space of a year, before I would write like, you know, 40 songs, like, or perhaps more, or perhaps less, but usually more, you know. And um, over the course of this year, I've only written a few songs, but I think they're a lot stronger, and it's because if you think about like any of my earlier material, like there's quite a lot of it I would like to one day go and re-record and do a lot differently. And yeah, I think that's just because like I'll write it, I'll be like, okay, this is it, flesh it out, and then record it, and then release it, and then just move on. And it all happens quite quickly. And then after I'm done with it, I'm kind of like, yeah, I could have probably taken more time on that and like done things differently and stuff, you know. So it's been nice to like write really slowly, you know, where I've just came up with like an idea, where I've got like a rhythm guitar riff, a lead guitar riff, and like a vocal melody rough idea. I've only got one line to it, and I just every now and again I pick up my guitar and I sing that line, and then I'll sing like some nonsense second line, and every time it's different. And then I'm like, oh yeah, and I'm like feel like I'm slowly zoning in on what feels to me to be like the perfect like melody slash line. Whereas like normally like I felt like vocals are like my most like weak element of my music, where I always feel like I kind of just like sing like the same old shit or like the same old kind of melody or like whatever, just the first thing that comes to my mind, just like, oh yeah, that fits, because like I don't really care about vocals as much as I care about like, well, like, obviously I care about them, but I'm just like not as good at that part of it as I am with the music. The music all just rattles out and comes like so fast, and the lyrics I always feel like are the hardest part. So it's been nice to like take extra time to, you know, get that right, you know.
Cool. And when you do your songwriting, do you write everything yourself, or do you write with any other members of the band or anything like that?
Most of the time I do that, like write it myself, but it's something that I kind of want to break out of, because like you know, in the past I've written with like other members or ex-members, and there's been some good stuff has come out of it, but I'm never 100% happy with it in terms of like you know, like the types of players that I was playing with in the past, like maybe because of like necessarily like stylistic differences or, you know, various other things, it would be like hard to reach the kind of compromise that satisfied me as much as doing it myself did. Whereas now I'm like working with people that like just get it. They just really get and understand the type of music that like I'm trying to make. And like, you know, if we're like playing along together, all of a sudden they're playing something that I'm like, whoa, that's actually really cool, rather than like, you know, like someone trying to like push it into something different. And I'm like, well, yeah, we could do that and that'd be cool, but I don't want to do that. Do you know what I mean? That's not what I'm trying to do. Whereas like these people like that I'm currently working with have more of a like, you know, isn't just an example, like our guitarist Jason, like you know, like we're playing and he's got like this fucking banging like Fender Jaguar, and like in the intro of a song it's kind of like, you know, just like the bass line boom 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 boom, and like that kind of scratchy lead guitar, and like the cymbal like, and then it builds up into this kind of heavy rock and roll thing. And like Jason all of a sudden, which is with like the tremolo arm, and fucking, is that what it's called, a tremolo arm? The fucking, I'm sure there'll be some like pure like music nerd that's watching kind of like, no, actually it's called something different. But like fucking you know, I started just playing these like dissonant weird chords on top of it, and I was like, whoa, that sounds really fucking cool. And it's like pushing the boundary into something different from what I would have just done on my own, but it's not taking it outside of the bounds of what the Kundalini Genie maybe is, in a sense, you know. So like, or not is, but is attempting to be.
Oh, cool. So sort of being able to like build on what where you've already started and stuff. That's cool.
Yeah. Also, just expanding on that, like one of the things I really want to break out of is like doing a rhythm section entirely myself, because for like consistency's sake, if I'm just going to record a song on my own, which 90% of all my songs are like that, it would be done to a click track for consistency, so that I can like, you know, like fire down a drum track or fire down a rhythm guitar track and just make sure that it's like tight as fuck. And I've also like, you know, a lot of people have that kind of mindset of like, oh, the click track, like it like takes away feeling or whatever, but I don't like agree with that at all. It's just obviously like you're still going to naturally speed up and slow down, but you've got like a kind of musical scaffolding to fall back on. But I do want to like break out of using that, because it's something that I've done so much, and it's the type of thing that suits like really dreamy music, and I like to make dreamy music, but I feel like, you know, if you listen to a lot of old records, you know, like the Velvet Underground or even like the Brian Jonestown Massacre or whatever, you know that they didn't do anything like that to a click, and there's a certain like honesty and like the fact that it's like not as tight as it could be, even though I'm sure that like you know, they could, for example, go back and like make it exactly as tight as they could make it and everything perfect, but then it just wouldn't be as good anymore. So kind of the idea of like taking a step back in production in that sense, and like recording, you know, rather than recording every individual part myself in controlled circumstances, you know, where you're recording the drums, you're just recording the drums, so you've got everything you need right in the perfect conditions to maximize your drum sound. Whereas like if you're recording drums, bass and guitar at the same time, you have to think about bleed and all that type of stuff, and it's messy, but there's a honesty in the messiness, you know. So that's kind of like taking a step back in that sense, and kind of trying to produce from that perspective.
Cool. Yeah, and I'm guessing probably you'll know this one, but just if you've got any top moments or top moment that you have as an artist.
See, I feel like I maybe sound like a broken record when people ask me that, because I just say the same thing, but it's hard to top it. And it's just like we obviously like supporting the Brian Jonestown Massacre at like the Barrowlands. I'm pretty sure it was like sold out, regardless of whether or not it was. It was very close to capacity, and there was like a sea of heads, you know, like further past I could possibly see, and it was outstanding, you know. And like we walked on stage, and you know, initially I was like, I wish they could like push it back like half an hour, because there's not really that many people here, like nobody's even going to see us, what's the point, type of thing. Like, you know, obviously the point of being in such a massive venue for there to be like 100 people there, you know, you're like, like it's still like a great crowd by any means, but because of the size of the room, you're like, what would be the point in such a large room? And you know, like we start playing, and like halfway through the first song I look up, and it's just like wall to wall, like of just heads, and I'm like, whoa, oh my god. Like, so that was definitely like mental, especially because it's full of people from Glasgow, and it was just like, or at least Scotland, and it was like some of the patter, I expected to be dead nervous and stuff, and to be dead like timid because there's so many people, but I was like full of the patter in that, like pure, like I'm from Cumbernauld, and we were like, oh, Cumbernaulds a shithole and all that, and people are like, yeah, you know what I mean, because everyone in Scotland's like, it's notorious for being a shithole, all that kind of thing. We're just having a bit of patter and stuff. Yeah, like that's like it's hard to top that. The only thing that comes close is maybe like the October European tour we did, like not last year but the year before. Feels like last year. It feels like the year like 2020 just didn't happen, like in terms of timescale. But yeah, like that had its highlights, you know. It's maybe not necessarily musically related, but on that tour, we were on the way to the very last gig. We had been, you know, on tour for like a month at this point. We're like deep in Austria, like, so obviously it's like everyone's burst. Everyone's been drinking like every night. Everyone's like just fucked. Do you know what I mean? Like playing 3-hour shows every night in random places, like waking up really early, not getting much sleep. You know, like pure sitting in a van for 6 hours a day and all that type of stuff. It was like really, really intense, and like I was really hungover, and our driver pulls us into this like wee Austrian like lake, and it's like crystal clear waters, and it's like, you know, we felt like so high up, which we were, and all around the lake is like littered with like mountain peaks, you know. It's just like it's like in this, it's like the bottom of this wee valley type thing, you know, and it feels like you're on top of the world, you're on the height of the world. It felt like, you know, it felt like the sky was so close, you know. If I jumped too high, then I would have like, you know, I would fall off the earth. It felt that kind of mystical way, you know, the clear waters, it felt just like this other world. And I just was so invigorated by it, and everyone was like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. Like everyone was kind of like run down, you know, like, oh yeah, cool, we've seen a million pure beautiful sights on this tour, so like this is just one more. And I was like, no, like let's all go in, let's jump in. And everyone was like, nah, like everyone was so hungover. And I was like, well, fuck it, I'm doing it. And I stripped down and I jumped in, and like the water was freezing, and it just cured my hangover. And all of a sudden, I had this like spiritual-esque epiphany of like, wow, like I've just jumped into like some fucking Austrian lake in the middle of nowhere, like, and the reason I'm here is because of music. The music that I made, like, brought me here and paid for all this, you know, and I'm getting paid to be doing shit like this. And I was just in this water, like, whoa. I don't. It's hard to explain. It was just like one of those spiritual moments. It wasn't like playing, but it was because of music that it happened. So I'm going to count it. That was like a really, really like that was one of the highlights of my entire life. It's hard to explain the simple meaning that people can find in like their everyday, you know, moments, and that was one of them. You know, where it was just like it just made sense. You know, it was like an epiphany, even where all of a sudden that was like this the crash of the cold water was just like, whoa, I'm alive. Do you know what I mean? I'm genuinely alive and doing things. Whereas sometimes it can be easy as a person to just go through emotions. You know.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Like definitely I can sort of got that image. I think I've seen the picture of you swimming in a lake at some point as well. And yeah, Brian Jonestown Massacre gig does sound amazing. Yeah. Just the last question. Yeah, what have you sort of been listening to recently? Anything you can recommend that will help us through the rest of lockdown?
um, I've been like actually like going back to my kind of like shoegazy type of roots. So like I've been listening to obviously a lot of like My Bloody Valentine and Slow Dive and stuff, Ride, um, and just kind of rediscovering that. What was the band? You know, I rediscovered my love for the Dandy Warhols. I was listening to Come Down and 13 Tales of Urban Bohemia, and I had my headphones on, and you know when it goes from what's this? I'm shite with song names, especially on albums where they're that good. You listen to the whole album, you can never remember the songs. Uh, um,
Yeah, I'm a
it's
nightmare.
I Muhammad into Nietzsche, or I fucking don't know how to pronounce it. I don't care. You know the way that it like just like kicks into it like so intensely. I remember listening to that, and you know, obviously I've loved the Dandy Warhols for ages, but I was listening to it recently. I was like, whoa, like just a total fresh, like, oh my god, like I forgot how fucking amazing that like transition is, and how banging this album is. So I've been listening to a lot of that. What else have I been listening to? A lot of. I discovered an album called Black Moon by Valium Agaline, and that just like fucking like really, really like all of a sudden I wanted to make albums like that. It's like mostly instrumental, like totally ambient, like drone type of stuff, but it's like not lazy. Do you know what I mean? It's not like just spacey sounds and fucking about with effects and stuff. It's very like well done, you know, and like very structured, and it's really beautiful. Um, yeah, I've been listening to a lot of kind of like shoegaze though recently. A lot of the songs that I've been kind of writing recently have been like dead shoegazy. Um, yeah, it's hard to think right now when you're put on the spot.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Thanks very much. Yeah, thank you very much again for talking to me today. So that was Robbie for the Kundalini Genie. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Kelly. It's nice to speak to you.
Big thank you to Robbie for taking the time out to have a chat with me. You can check out 1111, their fourth album that's on all streaming services, are also available on the band's Bandcamp page. Now, just before you go, make sure you do subscribe to a Fishbowl Events channel. We do have lots more interviews coming for you, daily reviews, and some live music as soon as we can as well.